"You're sitting where she used to sit," he said. And the fork stopped halfway to my mouth because his voice had cracked clean in two. And I did not know if I was welcome at that table or if I had just stepped into a grave he hadn't finished digging. My name is Nora Fenwick, and I was 26 years old and had never once in my life been asked to stay for supper by a man who wasn't kin. I had come to Millbrook Creek with my father's debts hanging off me like a wet coat. And after he passed that spring, the debts didn't die with him. They came looking for me instead. The bank sent a boy round twice a week to remind me the house was not mine much longer. I took in mending. I sold my mother's good plates one at a time so nobody would notice the shelf going bare. I was not poor in the way that makes a woman pitiful in stories. I was poor in the way that makes her tired down in her bones. The kind of tired that doesn't wash out with sleep. It was Mrs. Calloway at the Mercantile who told me about the Cowboy out past the ridge. Cane Whitlock, she said, like the name itself needed handling with gloves. Runs 300 head alone since his wife died. Doesn't come to town but for supplies and church, and not even church most Sundays anymore. She said it the way people say things about men they've decided are broken and best left that way. She said his wife had been gone to winters now, and that he'd let half his hired hands go because he couldn't stand the noise of other voices in his own house. I did not go out there for charity's sake. Not at first. I went because Mrs. Calloway offered me $2 to bring him a basket of preserves and check that he was still breathing, on account of nobody having laid eyes on him in 3 weeks. $2 was $2 closer to keeping my house. I hitched the mule cart myself, packed cornbread and a jar of stewed tomatoes and a square of shortbread wrapped in cloth, and rode 40 minutes down a road that hadn't seen a grader in years. Ruts deep enough to break an axle if you weren't careful. The house sat low against the hill. Gray wood, gone the color of old bone. And there was a garden out front that had clearly once been tended with love and was now just weeds standing at attention over dead rows. I knocked twice before I heard boots on the floorboards, slow, like a man dragging more than his own weight. He opened the door, a crack. His eyes were the kind of blue you see in a sky right before a hard frost, and there was 2 weeks of beard on him. And behind that beard, a face that might have been handsome once, before grief hollowed it out. "Didn't order nothing," he said. "Didn't sell nothing," I said back. "Mrs. Calloway sent me. Said you might want a hot meal that wasn't out of a tin." He looked at the basket like it might bite him. Then he looked past me at the mule cart, at the dust still settling behind it. And something in his shoulders gave just a little, the way a fence post gives before it falls. "Suppose you'd best come in, then," he said. "Wind's picking up." The inside of that house told me more than any gossip could. There was a woman's shawl still hung on a peg by the door, faded blue, and a row of jars on the shelf that somebody had canned with real care, labeled in a hand that wasn't his. Tight, careful letters, the kind a school teacher might have. The table had 2 chairs. Only 2, though the house was big enough for a family of 6. I set the basket down and started unpacking without asking, because I have found that men like that don't know how to ask for help. And if you wait on their permission, you'll starve alongside them out of politeness. I heated the tomatoes on his stove, sliced the cornbread, and when I turned around, he was sitting at that table already, watching me the way a man watches a fire he's not sure he trusts yet. "You don't have to feed me," he said. "I've been feeding myself fine." "You've been feeding yourself out of cans?" "From the look of that shelf," I said. "That's not the same as fine." He almost smiled. Almost it hung on the edge of his mouth, and then fell off before it could land. I set the plate down across from him. And that's when I sat, and that's when he said it. "My wife used to sit where you're sitting." Just that. No warning before it, no softening after. The words came out like they'd been sitting behind his teeth for 2 years, waiting on a reason to leave. I didn't move to get up. I didn't apologize either. What? Because I have learned that apologizing for another person's grief only makes them feel like they have to comfort you instead of the other way. Round? I just said, then I'll try not to take her place. Just borrow the chair a spell. He looked at me a long time after that. Long enough that I felt the heat climb up my neck, and I looked down at my plate instead of at him. Her name was Ellen, he said finally. Fever took her. Wasn't but for days between her catching chill and me burying her. His voice didn't break this time. It had gone past breaking into something flatter, more dangerous. I keep thinking if I'd rode for the doctor faster, you can't outride a fever that's already decided, I said. My mother went the same way. Different year, same cruelty. He nodded slow, like that was the first thing anybody had said to him in 2 years that wasn't trying to fix him. We ate mostly in silence after that, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was the kind you get sitting beside a stove on a cold night, where the quiet does the talking for you. I came back the next week. Told myself it was for the $2, though Mrs. Calloway hadn't asked me to go again. I brought a chicken pie this time, and he'd shaved. And the garden had 1 row cleared of weeds, just 1, but it was something. He didn't say much when I arrived, just held the door and said, "Wind's calm today." Like that was an invitation all its own. We fell into something over those weeks that I didn't have a good word for. Not courting, neither of us would have called it that. Not with his wife's shawl still hung on the peg and my father's debts still hanging over my head like a hawk that hadn't decided to strike yet. It was closer to 2 people learning to breathe in the same room again after each had near forgotten how. He started talking more. Told me about Ellen in pieces, the way a man tells you about an old wound, testing which parts still hurt and which have gone numb. Told me she used to sing while she worked, off-key and unashamed of it. Told me she'd wanted children and they'd tried 3 years without luck, and how that had near broken them both before the fever finished the job grief had started. I told him about my father, about the drinking that came after my mother passed, about watching a man who used to lift me onto his shoulders turn into someone I had to hide the good knives from. I told him things I hadn't told anyone, not the church women, not Mrs. Calloway, not a single living soul. Because there is something about a lonesome house on a lonesome road that makes truth easier to hand over than it is anywhere else. But pride is a strange animal, and Cain Whitlock had more of it than any man had a right to. One evening, near the start of autumn, the bank man came to my house while I was out at Cain's place. And by the time I got home, there was a notice nailed to my own front door, big as a church bulletin, saying the property would go to auction inside 30 days if the debt wasn't settled. I stood on my own porch reading my own ruin in black print, and I did not cry. Because I had promised myself 2 years back that I would not cry over paper, only over people. I told Cain the next time I saw him. Mostly because he asked why I looked like I hadn't slept. And I was too tired to lie. 30 days, he said. And something moved behind his eyes that I couldn't name yet. "I'll manage," I said, though I did not know how. "I always have. You don't have to manage alone." "I've been alone plenty long enough to know how to do it right," I said, sharper than I meant to. "I don't need pity dressed up as kindness, Cain. It ain't pity." His jaw was tight now, the way it got when he was holding something back that wanted out. "I've got the money. I've had it sitting in a tin since Ellen passed, money we'd saved for the family that never came. I could settle your debt tomorrow and never miss it." I stood up so fast, the chair scraped hard against the floor. "I didn't come here to be your charity, and I, sure as anything, didn't come here to spend the money you saved for children you never got to have. That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" My voice was shaking now, and I hated that it was, because shaking meant he could see clean through to how frightened I really was. You think because you fed me tomatoes and told me about your wife that you get to buy my house out from under me like I'm one more thing that needs fixing? He went quiet, and I saw the hurt land on him plain as a slap. And I regretted the words even as they were still hanging in the air between us. But pride doesn't let a person take words back easy. Not when pride's the only thing keeping the fear from showing. I ought to go, I said, and he didn't stop me. And I hated him a little for that too, though it wasn't fair, because I hadn't given him a single reason to. I didn't go back for near 2 weeks. The auction notice sat on my door like a wound that wouldn't scab. And I spent those nights doing sums that never came out right, no matter how many times I ran them. I sold the last of my mother's plates. I sold the mule, which meant I had to walk everywhere, which meant I couldn't even get out to Kane's place if I'd wanted to. And some cruel small part of me was almost glad of that, because it meant I didn't have to choose between my pride and his money. It was Mrs. Calloway who finally shook sense into me. Standing behind her counter with her arms crossed like a woman fixing to scold a child. You'd rather lose your daddy's house than let a lonely man do a kind thing for you, she said. That's not pride, Nora. That's foolishness wearing pride's coat. He's not doing it out of kindness, I said. He's doing it because he can't stand an empty chair, and I'm the nearest body to fill it. And if that's true, she said, would that be so terrible? Two lonesome people finding use for each other's company ain't a sin. Last I checked. I walked home that day, turning her words over. And turning over something else, too, the way Kane's face had looked when I'd thrown his kindness back at him. The hurt of it, the way it had made him go quiet in a manner I recognized. Because I'd gone quiet that same way plenty of times myself when someone, cared for, handled my grief carelessly. The auction was set for a Saturday. I woke that morning already grieving the house before I'd even lost it, walking room to room, touching the walls my father built. The hearth my mother had cooked at for 20 years. I dressed in my one good black dress, the one I kept for funerals, because that's what this felt like. And I walked the 3 miles into town because I had no mule and no pride left to spare on asking for a ride. There was already a small crowd gathered outside the bank when I arrived, and my stomach dropped clean through the ground because I saw him there. Kane, standing at the edge of the crowd in his good coat, the one I'd only ever seen hanging on a peg, never worn. His hat in his hands like a man at church. "What are you doing here?" I asked, low enough that the crowd wouldn't hear the wobble in it. "Same as everybody else," he said. "Watching an auction." "Kane, I'm not going to bid on your house out from under you if that's what's got you looking like you might faint," he said. And there was a gentleness in it that undid something in my chest I'd been holding tight for 2 weeks. I already told the bankman something else before I could ask what. The bankman himself stepped up, a thin fellow with spectacles and no patience for drama, and announced that the debt on the Fenwick property had been settled in full that very morning. And the auction was canceled. The crowd murmured and started to disperse, disappointed the way crowds always are when the scandal they came for doesn't happen. And I stood there with my ears ringing and my hands shaking. And I turned on Kane with everything I had left in me. "You said you wouldn't. I didn't bid on your house," he said. "I paid off the debt direct. Different thing entirely. You can be as angry as you like, Nora, but I wasn't going to stand here and watch 2 years of knowing you end with you homeless on a church dress Saturday because you're too proud to take a hand up." "That was Ellen's money," I said, and my voice broke clean in half saying it, because that was the part that hurt worst. That he'd spent the last thing he had of the family he never got to raise. Spent it on me. "No," he said, and he stepped closer, close enough that I could see the 2 years of grief still sitting in the lines around his eyes. But something else there too, something newer. That money was for a family I thought I'd lost the chance at having. I'm not saying I know what we are to each other yet, Nora Fenwick. I'm not going to stand here and make you promises we haven't earned. But I know I stopped dreading Sundays the day you started sitting in that chair. I know the house doesn't sound so much like a held breath anymore. That's not nothing. That's not pity money. That's a man spending on a future he's decided he wants to try for again. I did not have words for a long moment. The whole street seemed to have gone quiet around us, or maybe it was just that I couldn't hear past my own pulse. I threw your kindness back in your face, I said finally. Called it charity. You were scared, he said. Scared people don't always say the kindest thing. I know that better than most. He reached out, slow, like he was asking permission with the motion itself, and took my hand. Right there on the street, in front of God and Mrs. Calloway and half of Millbrook Creek. I'm not asking you to be Ellen's replacement. I'm asking you to be the first thing I've wanted in 2 years that wasn't just getting through the day. That's a different thing than sitting in a chair, Nora. That's choosing to stay in it. I didn't answer him with words. I answered him by not pulling my hand away. And by the way, I stepped in closer instead of stepping back. And by the way, the whole town seemed to exhale around us like it had been holding its breath on our behalf the whole while. We married that November, quiet, in the same church he'd stopped attending, with Mrs. Calloway crying loud enough for the both of us. I moved out to the house on the low hill, and the first thing I did, before I unpacked a single trunk, was take Ellen's shawl down off the peg myself, fold it with my own hands, and set it careful in the cedar chest, where memory belongs, kept, not buried, not worn either, just held with the respect it deserved. Kane watched me do it and didn't say a word. Just came over after and put his hand on my shoulder, and that was thanks enough for both of us. The garden came back the next spring, every row of it, and some evenings, when the light goes gold over the wheat and the wood smoke curls up thin from the chimney. I catch him watching me across that same table, in that same chair. And there's no ghost left sitting between us anymore. Just to people who found out that a lonesome house can learn to hold laughter again. If you're patient enough and brave enough to let somebody new pull up a chair,